Hey, all you Gretas and Shutezcats out there. Welcome to Chapter 6, Section 4 notes. This is what are the major type of freshwater ecosystems. So we did land ecosystems and we've done marine ecosystems, which is ocean, and now we're doing freshwater. So two main parts. We're looking at our surface water. So this is fresh water that flows or is stored in bodies of water on Earth's surface. So streams, lakes, rivers. Our freshwater life zones include standing water, such as lakes, ponds, and inland wetlands, and flowing water like streams and rivers. We also have what is called runoff. Runoff is surface water that flows into lakes, ponds, and wetlands. So very simply, think about when it rains and you see that water running down the street into the storm sewers. That is runoff that is going into the lake somewhere. Watershed is the land area that delivers the runoff, sediments, and dissolved substances, to freshwater systems. So it's all of the area, the land that will go to one freshwater system, one river, one ocean, one whatever. So freshwater ecosystems provide tons of ecosystem services. So these are things that nature does for us that does not charge us, but we benefit. So things like moderating the climate, cycling nutrients, treating waste, controlling floods, recharging the groundwater, habitat, places for things to live. It also has both genetic resources and biodiversity. Once again, the higher the biodiversity, the healthier the area is going to be, as well as providing us with scientific information. So tons of really awesome stuff that freshwater services or systems do for us. They also provide economic services, so things that we can sell for money. Food, like fish, can be found in these freshwater systems. Drinking water, irrigation water, making that water turn a turbine, and then you have hydroelectricity. You can have transportation corridors where boats can go, and then recreation. It's fun to play in the water, and people can make money off of that. So those are your economic services for your freshwater systems. Now your lakes. These are natural depressions that contain standing water. They're fed by precipitation, so rain, sleet, snow, whatever, runoff, streams, rivers, groundwater seepage. Lots of different ways that a lake can be filled up. Deep lakes normally consist of life zones that are defined by both depth and distance from shore, and I'll show you that in a second. Your oligotrophic lakes are typically really deep and steep-sided with a small nutrient supply. Your eutrophic lakes, so you're really clean lakes with not much in it. Your eutrophic lakes are typically very shallow and murky, and they have tons of nutrients. It can be too much nutrients when you have your algal blooms. So eutrophic a large supply of nutrients isn't always a good thing. Think back to our algal blooms. So here are your lake zones. You have your littoral zone, which is right close to the water. Then you've got your kind of out in the ocean area or in the middle of the area. So you have your limnetic zone is at the top. This is where most of the sun is going to go to. You have your profundal zone, which is like a little bit murky, but you can still have light. And then your benthic zone is down at the bottom. And you have different kind of critters that live in the different areas. Plants and things that are going to like the sun are going to be found in this top area. And then as you go down, you're going to have less and less critters. Streams and rivers. Streams join to form rivers, which carry large volumes of water. Rivers are going to flow through a source, a transition, and what are called floodplain zones. And I think there's a graphic coming up for that. Streams will also flow downhill. If they do flow downhill, they will help shape the land. So they can cut valleys, create sand, gravel, soil by breaking down the rocks into teeny tiny pieces. You also have what is called a delta that forms at the mouth of a river. And this is where sediment from upstream can be deposited. This often has estuaries and wetlands, so those areas where it's the fresh water is coming out, mixing with the salt water of the ocean. So here we go. We have our source zone, so that's where the source of the water comes from. So you have your rain and your snow, your glaciers, whatever happens to get your water. You have your transition zone where it's moving from here to here. Then you have your floodplain zone that tends to be flatter. You have this nice meandering streams. Sometimes part of it gets cut off. That's called an oxbow lake. You can have your salt marshes here. The delta is all these little pieces of land where the sediment has been deposited, and then you're out into the ocean. So the water goes straight, the sediment goes down. Freshwater inland wetlands are covered with freshwater all or part of the time. Think down in Florida. You got a lot of them. Covered with freshwater all or part of the time. Floodplains, swamps, small ponds, prairie potholes. They provide both ecosystem and economic services. So once again, things that help us and things that give us money. They filter and degrade waste and pollution. They can limit flooding and erosion. They absorb a lot of water. They sustain stream flow during the droughts. It helps to recharge the groundwater aquifers. It maintains biodiversity and provides food and recreation for humans. So there you go. Human impacts, because humans are stupid and then things die. We can restrict the water flow if we're making dams or canals, which is going to prevent things from going where they need to. Water flow is disrupted by flood control levees and dikes, which just means it's going to block water from a certain area to prevent flooding, but then obviously the water cannot continue where it was wanting to go. Agriculture and urban pollutants are added to freshwater systems, so we're polluting a lot, both with industrialized pollution and then farm waste and pollution and fertilizers. Wetlands have also been drained or filled in to grow crops or for constructions of buildings. So if you remember a few years ago, Texas and Houston had some really bad flooding. One of the reasons that Houston flooded so badly was because the wetlands around Houston had been filled in to build on. So not only did you cover up an amazing wetland with concrete, so the wetland can't absorb all that extra water, and now there's concrete, which absorbs no water. So that is one of the reasons that Houston flooded as badly as they did a few years ago. And we are done. So you have survived your notes. Before we go, I want to let each and every one of you know that you are good enough, you are smart enough, and people do like you. And in case I don't see you, good afternoon, good evening, and good God, do your homework.